Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. Today we're looking back at the hot comics from August 13th, 2021, and I'm recording this on February 11th, 2022. I give those dates so that you know when this information is actually relevant because the market's always moving and changing. So, as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists I look at to kind of represent the hot comics of that week 6 months ago, so we can see what they've done since, understand what factors made them hot then, what factors have affected the book since, so we can all make a little bit better decisions about what books we should chase, what books we should be patient on. So without further ado, let's get into this week's list. We got 16 different books we're going to talk about, although the first one kind of represents a group that was going on. So 6 months ago, basically was when the Walmart, people started discovering that the Walmart packs they'd started slipping like high ratio incentives into the Walmart 3-packs from Marvel. So people started buying a ton of those. So basically that whole thing. That was actually technically Walmart 3-packs was one of the items on the list. But one of the books that was showing up in those 3-packs is going to be our example for what's happened to him since. And that was Amazing Spider-Man number 55, the second print 1 in 50. So this was the white one, as you can see here. Back then it was going for $50 raw, which was up a little bit from what it had been. But you think about that, it's still ratio. 9.8s were going for $200. Now it's a $35 to $50 book. 9.8 going for $100 to $140. So technically, I put this as worth it. This is kind of a weird way to describe this because people were actually buying them out of the 3-packs, which means they were buying them for like 10 to 15 is where they were finding them. So if you actually found it in a 3-pack, then definitely buying the Walmart 3-pack was worth it. But if you were buying secondary market, it's actually backed up a little bit. It's going to all be back from the values, which makes sense because it was, there's more of them out there than there was before they were stuffed into the Walmart 3-packs and extra people got copies. So that was our kind of one oddball of the week and our representative of what happened with those Walmart books. Next, we're going to move into a couple of option news books, sort of. First up, we have Nocterra, number 1, or Nocterra, excuse me, number 1. This hit the list because there were rumors it was going to be optioned. So back then it was going for cover price raw, and a 9.8 was going for $70. But Tom and them put it on the list because there was a 150% increase in sales that week. Now, since then, we know this book did get optioned, so it actually had jumped up. Later, it hits the list again at a much higher price. But now it's a $5 to $20 book. 9.8s are 70 to 100. So if you bought it when they first started talking about the rumors, then it was probably worth it because it is up a little bit. If you got it for cover, if you got ahead of it, then yeah, it's worth it. Now, if you bought it later, well, we'll talk about that when we get to that. So next we have The Recount, number 1. And this again was its second week in a row on the list because of rumors of being optioned. Last week when we talked about it, it was going 15 to 20, and I thought it was kind of a trap. By the second week, it was up to $40 to $50 for this book from Scout Comics. If you've watched any of these over the years, lots of stuff from Scout gets optioned. Almost nothing comes of any of it. But anyway, that's why I predicted this was kind of a dumpster fire to pay that for this. And yeah, now it's a $5 to $20 book with the average sales being just about $10. 9.8 did go for $150, but that was a single sale, so it's hard to judge anything based on that. So yeah, this one turned into a very bad investment if you paid $50 for it, at least so far. Maybe you can still get it back if something actually does come of it, if it actually does get made into something. But at this point, yeah, you're in the hole quite a bit on this one. With that, we're going to move into our 3 covers of the week. First up, we have Pop Kill, number 4. This is the Adam Hughes variant. It was going for, at this point, raw copies of this thing were up to $1,000. And I had given in and just said straight cash. This had hit the list. I think this was the 3rd or 4th time over a couple-month period this hit the list. And I finally gave up. I kept saying, I'll be back, and it just kept climbing. I finally gave up. It was like straight cash, and then this is when it was finally an I'll be back. Raw copies now are $700 to $750, but that's only 2 raw sales recently. 9.8, $775 to $800. Again, just 2 slab sales as well. Still a few of these listed kind of in this range or higher. So they're not selling a bunch of these right now. So it's kind of turned into an I'll be back for sure, especially compared to this peak, which it seems to have peaked out about $1,000 for a raw copy. Doesn't seem to be sustaining that, and really not a lot of difference right now between just a raw and a 9.8. So yeah, but anyway, so definitely would probably venture toward the slabbed one if you're just getting this for the cover as opposed to risking it on a raw copy. Our next cover of the week was Defenders #1, the Peach Momoko 1 in 50. This is one of the Momokos I actually liked quite a bit. She's pretty hit or miss for me, but this was definitely one I liked. But this was only it hit the list at going for 75 to 80 plus, which is not even double ratio. You guys know what I say about that. That usually means it's going to settle a ratio. This one held a little better, a little wider range, still kind of this same area. It's going 50 to 100 right now, basically, for a raw copy. 9.8 will cost you 125 to 175. So this one's actually been pretty steady at that between ratio and double ratio range. You could definitely do slightly better on occasion than the 75-80, but occasionally it's went for a little more. So it's definitely right in that same range. So I marked that one down as a steady for this week over the last 6 months. Next, we have Nice House on the Lake, #1. This is the third print, 1 in 25. That was hitting the list. Back then, it was going raw copies of this were going for $80 to $100, and still kind of setting 80 to 90. But and with a 9.8 sitting around 175 to 225. So this one's also been pretty steady. But I will say the last raw sale was way back on January 3rd. There's only been one slab sale since then. There's still been a bunch of these. The listing price is still around here, but it's not moving right now. Probably partially at least because it's on hiatus. So I don't know if it's if you could still truly call it steady, but there's no sales to say that people aren't willing to sell it for less yet. So, so this one definitely is it's held steady, but definitely during this lull before they bring the series back, it's not really selling very good. With that, we're going to move into our only kind of comic buzz book of the week, and that is DC Urban Legends #6. You guys know what this is. This is the Tim Drake came out as bisexual. They followed this up later with the Jonathan Kent thing. Got a ton of national media attention. Back then, raw copies were going for $30 to $50. Now it's 10 to 40, but mostly in that $20 to $30 range. There's occasional sales for less than 20, occasional sales for more than 30, but really, I gave you the whole range of 10 to 40, but really it's more of a $20 to $30 book now. So definitely an I'll be back on the raw side. 9.8 will cost you 125 to 150. So still interest in this book, just down a little bit from what it was when it first was coming out and the news was breaking. The next 4 books, you could almost argue are all related to the Suicide Squad movie, but 3 of them you could argue could have been on the list. Could be about stuff that's happening right now. And the first up is Peacemaker #1. So this, obviously the Suicide Squad movie was coming out, but then we also got news as it was coming out that we were getting a Peacemaker show. That's why this book hit the list. This is the first appearance of his father as in this book, in the first issue of this 4-issue miniseries. Caused this book up to jump to a $25 book raw. 9.8 was going for $280 back then. Well, now we're in the show. The show has been coming out. The father does appear, and now it's a 15 to 50 book with most of the sales kind of in that $30ish range. 9.8 going for $200 to $400. So this one is actually pretty steady around 25ish, dollars, but definitely call this one worth it because it's up slightly, and that's with the show actually actively coming out. The show still only came back as worth it. So next, we have Detective Comics #585, first appearance of Ratcatcher. If you watched Cash or Trash that I did last week, this was actually on the current hot list just last week. So this one kept climbing, right? Not really. So Ratcatcher back then was kind of a hit from the movie. But this is not her first appearance. This is the first appearance of her dad. She's never actually appeared in the comics yet. Raw copies back then, though, jumped up to $30. A 9.8 hit $400. This last week, we've got rumors that James Gunn is doing another spin-off show from the Suicide Squad movie, and people are guessing it's her. We don't know that for sure, and caused this book to hit the list again. Right now, raw copies are going for $15 to $40. 9.8 though is going for $2.95. So this is actually an I'll Be Back, even with these current rumors that she's going to get her own show. Again, this isn't even her first appearance, which is why I'm surprised people spec'd on this as hard as they did. It had backed up more than this, obviously, between when the movie came out and these more recent rumors, because it got hot again just here in the last couple weeks. So next we have Suicide Squad #1. This is the AMC variant that you could only get at theaters as the movie was coming out. Raw copies were going for $10 to $15 back then. Still kind of a $5 to $15 book. Most of the sales, though, are under $10. So I put this as an I'll Be Back. Yeah, it's kind of faded, but there wasn't much room to fade, I guess. So it's still in that same kind of range, but definitely a lot less interest than there was when the movie was coming out. And I'll be honest, I didn't particularly like that cover. So, and our last one that's kind of related on this, that's actually, again, related to the show, the Peacemaker show, is New Teen Titans Annual #2. This is the first appearance of Vigilante. This hit the list because the news about the Peacemaker show said that he was going to be in it and that there was casting news. So raw copies back then were going for $25, 9.8 going for $200. Again, the show's coming out right now, and it's only sort of been kind of worth it. It's $10 to $30, but most of the sales are in that $25, $30ish kind of range. 9.8 is going for $200 to $400, so it's crept up as well. So I kind of put this as worth it versus I'll Be Back, even though you can get it for less than that $25. So yeah, and this is with the show coming out. So my guess is 3-4 months from now, this will be too much for this book. So we'll see. So those were our DC TV and movie stuff. The rest of our list this week, which is 5 more books, are related to MCU, Disney Plus stuff. First up, we have Hawkeye #9. The second print Kate Bishop cover. I could have put this in the cover section, but I put it here. Back then, a 9.6, so this hard to find second print went for $800. A 9.8 went for $1160. All in anticipation of the Hawkeye show, which wasn't due to come out for a few more months. But yeah, that's what was going on. Now, raw copies will cost you $40 to $80 here in January. But when the show was coming out in December, they were at $150 plus. So December, $150 plus. The only couple sales in January are $40 to $80. 9.8s are down to $500 to $600. So this book is already really correcting, turned into a trap from 6 months ago, but it's already correcting hard just on the raw side. You can see from a month after the show came out, already the buzz is dying down. Even though we're going to get Hawkeye, we're going to get Kate Bishop more going forward. We know this. The book's still backing up. Out of sight, out of mind already. And this is a very typical pattern for these MCU books. I get a lot of flack sometimes when I say, come back, don't buy them during the show. And everybody's like, oh, they'll keep going up. This is very common. It's already just a month and a half later, and the book's already backed up a lot. So next we have Invincible Iron Man #1, the second print. This is super hard to find. Obviously, this is kind of when Riri actually takes over the title. And back then, raw copies were going for $500. Last 3 months, there's only been 2 sales that I could find on eBay. A raw copy went for $30. Now, admittedly, that one was listed as very fine near mint, so it was not like a 9.8 candidate that only went for $30. Another near mint candidate, though, did go for $160. Those were the only 2 sales, but $160 down from $500, yeah, that's really bad. So there are just a couple of copies listed, but yeah, and they're for significantly more. But yeah, this book hasn't been selling except for much less than it was 6 months ago, and we haven't even got to the Riri show yet. So next we have Moon Knight #13. This is the first time Moon Knight and Daredevil fight appears to be the key here. I know the Moon Knight show was coming back then. We've actually gotten a trailer now. We're a little over a month away from Moon Knight starting on Disney Plus. But I'm not sure why people were chasing this particular fight. I guess a lot of spec here, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of these types of keys. For me, like, it would have to be truly iconic fights, I would think. And I don't think this one quite fits that, but who knows? Maybe for some people it does. Raw copies back then, though, were going for $30. A 9.6 went for $90, which seems like an odd sale. Sometimes Tom will put in those kind of odd slab sales that don't really show the book as being hot. But anyway, that was when they put in there. Now raw copies are going for $5 to $40, but with most sales sitting solidly right at around $20. So down just a little bit of an I'll be back there. Now a 9.8 had been going for around $400. Again, not surprising, an 81 book. 9.8s usually carry a little bit of a higher premium just because of the age of the book here. Next, we have Exiles number 3. This is the first Peggy Carter as Captain America. And obviously this was hitting the list because of the What If show and Captain Carter in the What If show, where Peggy got the serum instead of Steve. And so back then, with that show coming out, raw copies were going for $50. 9.8 was going for $500. So again, this isn't exactly the same version, obviously, because this one was being called Captain America. She did go by Captain Carter in the show. We are getting a Captain Carter comic series. So again, you could argue that maybe that's why this book would be hot. So it might have been hotter right now than it would have been sometime in between here and then. But now raw copies are $30 to $60, 9.8 only $400. So they've backed up a little bit here since we've had the show. Not as much as you might think. Part of that, I think, is being sustained by the fact that we're about to get the new comic series. So there's still some people thinking about it. The last book on the list is also Exiles number 3. This is the 1 in 10 game variant, which has Peggy as Captain America again on the cover, and this time it's kind of the Rosie the Riveter, a little bit homage. Back then, raw copies were going for $250 to $300. 9.8 hit 1,000. Now a raw copy will cost you $200-ish. So this one, no recent 9.8 sales. This one's down a little bit. Definitely another I'll be back. So this book backed up a little bit. So that is this week's list. Interestingly enough, we had several books that, like the thing that was making them hot, anticipation of the Peacemaker show, is happening right now, and those books are only kind of worth it. They're not even like higher than they were 6 months ago. So trailers, news, those are pretty high peaks a lot of times for these books. The show itself is often a high peak, especially if it's a surprise appearance by somebody. But then these books tend to settle. My guess is they will not hold this going forward, but we'll have to see. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.